Rorschach, one of the most iconic characters from Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons' Watchmen, is a dark and complex figure shaped by his traumatic past and harsh worldview. His character is a deconstruction of the traditional superhero archetype, particularly drawing from pulp heroes like The Question and Mr. A, who were both created by Steve Ditko. He serves as a critique of traditional superhero archetypes, blending psychological depth with themes of moral absolutism, trauma, and societal decay. Walter Kovacs adopted the persona of Rorschach after a horrific experience in which he investigated the kidnapping of a young girl. Upon discovering she had been murdered and her body fed to dogs, he snapped, fully embracing his identity as Rorschach, a vigilante who operates with a black-and-white sense of morality. In Watchmen, Rorschach is the driving force behind the investigation into the murder of Edward Blake the comedian, which eventually leads to the uncovering of a larger conspiracy. His uncompromising nature, refusal to compromise his moral code, and unwillingness to accept any shade of moral ambiguity put him at odds with the other characters. Rorschach's journal, where he meticulously documents his thoughts, provides a significant narrative thread in the story. Rorschach's worldview is starkly black and white, devoid of moral compromise. His refusal to acknowledge any moral gray area defines him. This is evident in his famous quote, "Never compromise, not even in the face of Armageddon." For Rorschach, justice and morality are absolute, and anyone who violates them is subject to his violent brand of punishment. However, the world of Watchmen is filled with ethical ambiguity. The series examines how other heroes navigate complex moral questions, often compromising for the greater good. Rorschach stands as a stark counterpoint to characters like Ozymandias, who embraces moral ambiguity by sacrificing millions for global peace. Rorschach's absolutism can be seen as both a strength and a flaw. On one hand, it grants him an unwavering sense of purpose. On the other, it isolates him and distorts his understanding of justice. His refusal to compromise ultimately leads to his death, emphasizing that his rigid morality cannot survive in a world of shades of gray. Walter Kovacs, Rorschach's alter ego, is a product of severe trauma. His childhood was marked by abuse, neglect, and violence, experiences that shaped his personality and worldview. His mother's abusive behavior, compounded by growing up in a society he saw as morally bankrupt, created deep psychological scars. The incident that turned him into Rorschach, the discovery of a kidnapped girl's brutal murder, was the moment he abandoned any remnants of compassion or humanity. This event, where he witnessed the worst in human nature, transformed him into a cold, unfeeling vigilante. His mask, with its shifting ink blot patterns, symbolizes his fractured sense of identity. The Rorschach ink blot test, used to reveal the subconscious, is an apt metaphor for his own mental state. His mask is not just a costume but an extension of himself, one that reflects his moral clarity in a world of chaos and corruption. Rorschach's psychological damage manifests in his paranoia, extreme violence, and inability to form healthy relationships. He trusts no one and is completely isolated, living in squalor and only finding solace in his mission to deliver justice. His lack of empathy makes him a deeply tragic figure, someone who, because of trauma, can no longer relate to the world around him. Rorschach is often seen as a deconstruction of the superhero genre, particularly the hard-boiled, vigilante archetype. Moore takes this archetype to its extreme. Rorschach's single-mindedness is not heroic but terrifying. He isn't the idealized, noble superhero of traditional comics. He's a man driven by rage and a damaged psyche, whereas many superheroes operate under the belief that they are doing good. Rorschach's version of justice is violent and personal. He doesn't care about law or social systems. In fact, he sees them as failures. His methods, brutal and often indiscriminate, suggest that the vigilante archetype, if translated into the real world, would be far from glamorous. Rorschach becomes a vessel for Moore's critique of superhero morality, questioning the ethics of those who take justice into their own hands. Rorschach's extreme worldview isolates him from almost everyone. Throughout Watchmen, he has no friends or personal connections, relying solely on his role as a vigilante for meaning. He disdains almost everyone around him, seeing them as corrupt, cowardly, or morally inferior. His interactions with other characters are often cold and distant, underscoring his inability to form meaningful relationships. Despite his heroism in certain contexts, Rorschach is ultimately alienated from the very society he seeks to protect. His journal entries, which serve as a form of narration, reveal his deep contempt for humanity. He sees himself as the last bastion of moral purity, fighting in a world that has already succumbed to decadence and decay. Yet this alienation makes him blind to any positive aspects of humanity. He is trapped in his misanthropic worldview, convinced that only his way is right. Rorschach's death is one of the most poignant moments in Watchmen, when Ozymandias reveals his plan to unite the world by staging a catastrophic event. Rorschach refuses to accept the moral compromise, vowing to expose the truth. Dr. Manhattan kills him to maintain the peace, but Rorschach's journal, filled with his suspicions, is left in the hands of a tabloid newspaper. This ending highlights the ultimate futility of Rorschach's worldview. His moral code is unbreakable, but it cannot survive in a world built on ethical compromise. His death symbolizes the end of absolute morality, yet his legacy, his journal, leaves the door open for his ideals to re-emerge. His influence endures, but his unyielding nature ensured that he could not live to see it. Rorschach's character is central to the thematic core of Watchmen. His black and white morality forces the reader to confront difficult ethical questions. Is it better to compromise and save millions, or to uphold the truth no matter the cost? Rorschach embodies the tension between idealism and pragmatism, raising the question of whether true justice can exist in an imperfect world. Moreover, Rorschach serves as a reflection of the dangers of extremism. His unwavering beliefs blind him to the nuances of human nature, and while he is often seen as heroic for his dedication, he is also a warning of the cost of inflexibility. Moore uses Rorschach to explore the dark side of the superhero myth, asking whether someone so rigid and detached from humanity can ever truly be a hero. Rorschach is a deeply tragic figure, both heroic and monstrous. His moral absolutism, shaped by trauma and alienation, makes him a compelling character who challenges conventional ideas about justice and heroism. Through Rorschach, Watchmen offers a nuanced exploration of morality, power, and the consequences of uncompromising belief. His legacy is one of enduring moral complexity, forcing readers to grapple with the ethics of justice in a morally ambiguous world.